remember all the details of the story, but him and his dad came to Eastern Canada when he was like 14 years old, because in South America, wherever it was he was living, was being taken over by a mining company. And his grandma didn't leave with them, or didn't have permission to leave with them, or chose to stay in her land where she belonged. And they knew that that would be the last time they saw her. And it was just such, he was able to say it in that way. But how could you? How could you move on from living that? And him and his dad moved to Canada and moved on, you know, I mean, and knew that grandma didn't come with them, away from their land. What else? And then I've got my dog sitting here. And I knew that the RCMP had to kill all the dogs because of the rabies bullshit. I mean, and that part I had to turn the book off. I mean, they didn't have to kill the dogs. They had to kill the dogs just because the dogs were the tool. The dogs were the partner in the community that got the people out to the land and got them back home again. The dogs could find their way home, you know, no matter what the weather, no matter, and the dogs could find their way over the ice. They knew which ice to walk on. And she explained that again. And they, and, you know, and the RCMP could just, how could they just go in there and actually believe that they were killing the dogs for the safety of the people? How could they actually believe that? How could they actually not know any better? So, the tools. What else did she bring up? So I listened to this book in spits and spots. I have no idea if I heard the whole thing. It was very, very blatant, very, very touching. I mean, I know that my family was sent to Manitoba by the Brits in 1885. And what else was happening in 1885, 1883, right? What else was happening? My family was sent to Manitoba to hold the land away from others. And there's no other way to put it. That's not what they were told. They were told they were gifted the land. No, that wasn't what happened for real. You know, so reality is a really rough road for all of us, really. I'm not saying that I'm suffering from it like the same parallel to an Indigenous, but I read in some other, and it had to do with the white supremacy, Black Lives Matter kind of stuff that we're doing elsewhere, but the separation from truth is as harmful to both sides, right? The separation, staying this far away from truth is harmful to both sides, to both peoples. So to move towards truth is the only way to move towards moving on, to moving forward, right? So long as we stay far away from truth on both sides, it's harmful. That's enough. Oh, sorry. Okay. Do you want me to pick someone else, Michelle? You pick someone else.
Yes, please.
Me pick?
Yep.
Oh dear. Everyone else, who else hasn't spoken? Roberta, have you said anything?
I haven't. No.
Give us some.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't read the whole book. I listened to the Massey lectures, the original, when she gave the Massey lectures. So I've listened to her twice and then started reading the book. And there's a phrase that stands out for me, how all the interactions with colonizers and Indigenous peoples around the world are set up for failure for the Indigenous peoples. So it's systemic. And you look at every aspect. So it's the food, health, belief systems, language, children. You take it all. So it's set up, you know, you look at the Indian Act, it's set up for failure. And then it's this strange that she talks about, you remove them kind of the meaning from people. I think of these girls, you know, 12-year-old girls committing suicide. And because you've removed all the sort of autonomy connections, and it just happens over and over. So what happened, you know, the original taking of the land hasn't really changed. And I find it heartbreaking to think of young people, like girls, young boys, young girls, having no sense of, or where death is a better thing than going on, where people want to escape. And I'm probably doing some projecting here, because in my family, people who know me know this, that my mother survived being abducted, raped, and attempted murder, and put in a river, and she survived. So I think of, and she was a child, she was 11, and so was on her own at 13 and fending for herself. So I see, you know, growing up with someone who experienced that, and how hard it was for her to create meaning and identity. And I just think of all the girls, all the boys doing that work. And sort of, my mom escaped. They didn't have foster care in those days. It was in the 40s. But she kept escaping the police. She actually ended up in jail for a week as a kid, because in those days they put kids in a home, like a big home, an institution. So she was always escaping that. So just thinking that, so many fake ways to help people. And she talks about that, the kind of fake patronizing ways to help people that are very confusing, because it's supposed to be helping you, but it's actually removing from you, if that makes sense. So yeah, I found it incredibly powerful, and she's an amazing speaker. She's really an amazing speaker. So yeah, very powerful. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I really think that the TRC, like the bigger series one, not the executive summary, might be something of interest to you, because they actually, like, back in those days, they did put them in institutions. It was a pipeline that came straight from Indian residential school. And it's written really well in one of the books about how they created child welfare as a way to take care of the children who didn't have a home to go back to, or that it was cheaper to put them in a home than it was to send them back home after they took them and displaced them, or their parents had committed suicide because their children were taken. You know, like it actually is all interconnected, your mom's, you know, reality in 1940 to what was happening as government policy with these institutions, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Who would like to go next? I kind of need folks to chime in, because I'm on my phone now and not my computer. I can't see like I used to be able to see. So like before, I'd be like boom, 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 boom. I can't do that right now. So I really do need people to, you know, if you remember the order you were in some way, I would really appreciate it.
I can go. I think I was last for the introductions, but I'm happy to speak now if no one else cares to. The book was very hard to read. It was infuriating reading it as a white person, seeing all the times. I think a couple other readers have responded to this, also kind of wondering what is going on in the minds of those white people who are, you know, the people in the little outposts, the people who show up and don't just scream and say, this, what, what is going on? No, 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 no. And then report back and raise the roof to change things. And, you know, the shock of that is not new to the Indigenous community for sure, that outrage, but that outrage is just, it's hard to know where to put it. And then one insight that I had into that was from the book at the very, very end. She talks about, she quotes Senator Murray Sinclair and his observations about how the history has been purposely left out of the white education system. So the people remain asleep. And Heather, you referred to the separation from the truth. And that's, I think a lot of white people, not to excuse or say like, oh, if only they knew, but just it's institutional. There's this huge machine that grinds out people who are literally blissfully ignorant. They literally, now it's on them to educate themselves. That's where, you know, that's, I want to be clear that that is my belief. But it's extremely frustrating to think about that big machine continuing to grind on, and generations and generations of white people not even being given the tools to understand what has actually happened and what is actually happening now. I think reconciliation can't happen until that happens. When white people can't say, that is what truly happened. That was a genocide. That happened. Those were the events. Instead, we couch it in terms of, you know, oh, Little Bighorn happened or whatever. And I don't know how to get that gear changing and get people taking it seriously. You know, Alberta, as we all know, is in the process of taking their curriculum in even the wronger direction rather than the righter direction. And so I'm not sure, but there's a great book by Ta-Nehisi Coates called Between the World and Me. And it's talking about Black-white relations in the USA, but that same element of white people remaining asleep, he calls it, they're in a state of asleepness. And it is true. It's true. So I don't know. This book was very, very powerful, very educational, very, very painful, humiliating, disgraceful, enraging, wonderful, extremely well written. She's brilliant. I can't wait to read more and listen to the Massey lectures and, you know, go further with her. But anyway, that was kind of the main takeaway I got from this book, was that sleepiness and knowing that that's imprinted into the big grinding machine that we all live under. So that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that and articulating that. And for those who are new here, I just really encourage you to consider writing a really positive, strong review. And the reason for it is that I've actually checked out some books that we've done, and a beautiful book like this or Seven Fallen Feathers still gets negative racist reviews because people are jerks and can be jerks. So I just encourage for folks who really understand reconciliation, like everyone here seems to understand, consider writing a review to help add to the great work that is happening here. So thank you.
Can I just say one quick thing to reinforce that? I always write reviews on Goodreads, and I was shocked to see that this had, I think it was under 1,000 reviews, and a lot of them were so ignorant, you know, just anyway, you all know the ignorance. So just to reinforce what Michelle is saying there.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Who would like to go next?
I can go. It's Crystal. Yeah, I was thinking it's so hard to summarize a book like this that has so many parts, and all the parts seem super important. And yeah, it was extremely difficult to read. A lot of thinking about, like, are white people actually sociopaths? Is that what's wrong with them? Like that part of empathy, part of their brain doesn't actually work. Like, is it a biological problem? What is the problem? And also looking at, you know, who, and I like how people are like that one pedophilic priest was named in this book. And that's what I always think about residential schools, like all of those teachers and all of the staff there should be named, and their names should be recorded in a hall of shame for everyone to see, and their family members. I'm sorry, like it could end up being my family members, but that's what I was thinking too, like what Heather was talking about, how many people are descended from those people today, and what's their burden to bear to repair this damage that their ancestors did. So Michelle, when you call in the ancestors, on my side, I feel like I don't know if I want those people around in my spiritual space, because I don't know if, like, when they died, what happened to them? Did they get enlightened? Did they see what they did was horribly wrong? I'm not too sure. Like, maybe it has to be someone like me to teach them first before they could. I don't know. And yeah, so naming people I found very powerful, and also just going back to that person, and you see that person actually still minimizing what they did, but getting to live a nice life on Vancouver Island as an elderly person. And you see, like, there has been no real like talk about reconciliation or anything like that, right? And then the people that she talks to who are, in spite of this massive, like all of the suicides, all of the ongoing harm, no resources, like constantly fighting and fighting and fighting. Like, these people are the heroes. Like she talks about at the end, the children, you should know who are your heroes and who are your villains. I'm like, these are the people. And Tanya Talaga is the hero. Like, it was hard for me to read this, but like imagine having to research this and go into depth into depth after the previous book, even, right? Like someone like this, I could only hope to be like one fraction as a person as she is how I feel reading this. Yeah, and then you saw what happened to that doctor writing back about the residential schools, right? Well, they made short work to get rid of him. Bryce. After his long career. And to me, that's like a study of, okay, well, study up on what happens to people who advocate. So then you can be prepared when you start advocating and the system starts coming against you. You can be prepared for that, because it's going to happen. The system is not just going to roll over and say, actually, yeah, we were wrong, and we suddenly developed a conscience. They're not. Like, the only way institutions change is by being shamed and having something happen, like maybe with climate change. It's not going to be financially an incentive anymore. And the things that used to bring money are not going to bring that money anymore. And so it's not going to like naturally incentivize itself over and over. So yeah, this book was it's a deceptive little book in this pretty cover on the front. When I started reading, I'm like, oh, the first chapter, that was really tough. I mean, let's see what the next, oh my God, they're even worse. Like through the whole book. And so, but like, yeah. And then never let anyone say the information isn't out there. Never. I will bop them over the head with this book. Like,
yeah, I've definitely lost patience for, oh my God, I don't know what to do. It's so overwhelming. I have no patience for that anymore. My goodness. How about you, Kat? Have you had a chance to speak? I think you.
No, not yet.
Okay, giver.
Actually, this is the second time I've read this book. I find it a super important book that everyone should read. Much like several of the other Indigenous authors that we have read, who lay things out so clearly in such beautiful writing and just completely devastating facts, of course. I agree with what everyone here has said, and y'all are really so eloquent. One part that really moved me was actually the part about Sulakaut. because I lived there when I was a child for 3 years because my father was in the Air Force. And I actually was in the zone hospital after I contracted salmonella. That was the only hospital in the region. So I did spend some time in the zone hospital. So it was quite horrifying to read more about this place that I didn't even know anything about. My mom even tried to tell me that she felt discrimination there because it was an Indian hospital. And I had to give her a little talking to about that. I know, eh? I know. It was like, oh my God. Yeah, Mom, we got some learning to do here. So yes, that's all I really have to say. Everyone should read this book. And as Tanya quotes Thomas King, you can't unknow what you know now. Don't say you didn't know, because now you know, and what are you going to do about it? And that's what we're all trying to do, is do something in our own small ways about things. And I agree with what others have said about there is no reconciliation yet before truth, and we all need to still be working on the truth. That is huge, huge thing, to learn the freaking truth, first of all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to keep going. So we have Kathy, Crystal, Donna, did you, I think you spoke. If I'm wrong, chime in. How about Jeremy?
I could speak.
Sure, go ahead.
So I guess everything that everyone's said so far really resonates with my feelings about the book as well. And I kind of feel like I'm saying the same thing I did about the TRC report chapter last month, where it just hits you over and over again with example by example by example of the same thing happening over and over and over again. But in particular, Tanya's book, I appreciated the global perspective, and really made it clear that colonialism is colonialism, and the colonial project is at that scale. And it made me realize that I've had a bit of a local bias in my recent self-education, thinking that learning that all these things are happening here in Turtle Island. But I guess when I thought of Australia or the homeland of the Sami people, Africa, anywhere else really, I thought, okay, the colonialism has happened there. It's over. It's kind of old history. But reading the book made me realize that it's pretty much the same as it is here, where it's ongoing and recent history, and it's not over. So seeing that big picture and the way it's happening all across the world, all the same way, all at the same time, I think is really helpful for me to understand that it's been an intentional erasure and process, that there's a playbook and it's being followed. And I guess the other aspect of the book that really hit me, of course, was this idea of the youth taking their own lives. And then I'm 30 years old. I'm still consider myself a youth, I guess, although maybe not quite anymore. But my generation and the younger generations, I think, are well known, or there's this feeling, I guess, that of hopelessness, and there's a lot more depression, it seems anyway, and open discussion of hopelessness and suicide, and that's white people in a privileged position feeling that way. So to realize that being in that same time space, but having all this extra trauma, I can't even wrap my head around what that must feel like. And yeah, it's just really heavy. And I guess this is maybe a question, or was this something someone said earlier? I'm not remembering exactly now, but the idea, it was in the video at the start about the choice to take your own life is not your own, but made by the creator. And that's something I need to think about a lot right now. So if anyone has any thoughts on that comment, I would certainly appreciate them.
When I have my podcast, I really encourage people, if they're triggered, to contact the Hope for Wellness helpline. It's a 1-800 number, more for Indigenous, because they understand the intersectionalities of foster care and 60 Scoop and Indian residential school and missing or murdered Indigenous women. They have a hotline as well. The National Inquiry has a hotline for women now. And then, of course, for non-Indigenous, there's always just stress lines to talk about suicide. And then for kids, the Kids Helpline. And I just think your question, like this, that needs to be said first before we even try to attempt to talk about your question, because if it's triggering for just that opening like minute and a half of Tanya speaking, this is a really triggering book, and the opening page says this is trigger warning. It's so hard for me. I feel like my life is a trigger warning. So I feel like when I introduce myself, I have to introduce myself as, hi, my name's Michelle Robinson. My name is Red Thunder Woman. Trigger warning, I'm going to talk about uncomfortable things. I feel like I have to say that all the time, because I'm always talking about these things. These are really difficult conversations to have. And how do you even start unpacking suicide? That's really what this whole book is about, though, right? So I want to also invite Kathy to answer this in any way that you want, if you want to unmute, about how do you handle suicide? This is really a dark day for folks who have lost through homelessness, opioid death. It's kind of like a year reset as well. So and I always try to remind people that they're worthy, that they are fine who they are. Struggling Métis, whether they're struggling First Nation, but that doesn't mean everyone listens to Michelle Robinson. Algorithms are set as such, so they can't actually, that is the hard part. So I think maybe as our role as a book club, and again trying to honor the treaties, is to acknowledge that this is a really hard, stressful time of year. Actually, just to bring it back to residential schools, this is the time of year that a lot of kids would go back to their communities after, a few months of being absolutely sexually humiliated, abused by their classmates, by their priests, by their nuns, everyone. Imagine going back to so-called celebrate Christmas, a time that was an imposed Christian belief system, and going back and being afraid to speak your language, being afraid to speak, being afraid to hug. I can't even possibly comprehend how awful all of these things happen at once, and by kids who can't articulate it. I'm 43, I'm still struggling. There's a lot to unpack with this conversation. The kids who are forced to leave their community just to get a stupid high school because Indian Affairs can't get their shit together, pardon my language, and build a school in a community, or have running water for that matter. But Kathy, is there anything you'd like to add about, suicide and Indigenous perspective on that?
Geez, I don't know. Heavy topic for sure. I've had a suicide in my family this year. probably late young nephew. When I read the book, I thought this explains more to me. You know, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. And yeah, I feel actually, Michelle, you've referred to this fatigue of it started for me when the Black Lives Matter, when George Floyd was murdered, and I was so triggered. And it's been an exhausting run since then. Not because he was my brother or anything, but it was just bang, wounds were open wide. So what I'm doing for myself to get through this is I'm speaking my truth. And I'm doing it where my truth is honored. If somebody wants to argue and discredit what I'm saying when it's my truth, then I'm not gonna go there. Yeah, so that's all I have to say. Thanks.
I think that was really powerful. So I appreciate you chiming in, and Jeremy for asking that question. Thank you. Did we miss anyone? Heather, you put up your hand. Did you want to speak, or did you miss your turn?
I had my turn, Michelle, but if I can say something, thank you, Kathy. That's amazing sharing, and truthful. And we had my auntie committed suicide a few years ago. So that is part of, I'm not taking it to me, but that is part of the lack of honesty on both sides, the lack of truth on both sides. But from what I understand about suicide, which is this much, very little, is it has to do with personal value. And it has to do with you valuing yourself and you valuing your footprint, your the earth wanting your presence, the earth and the, all your relations wanting your presence and you wanting to be part of it and valuing. And if you have been devalued for whatever reasons and for however long, I think that is part of the component. And I think that might be what they're referring to with creator, because creator puts you here as a piece of value, put value in you. But if you don't see that yourself, or you've been devalued so far, you don't see that yourself, then that's where the disconnect is. And that's why creator could decide if you are here, but it's not your choice. But if you're missing that connection, that's where the disconnect is. Does that make sense?
Anybody else have some to chime in about reading the book and reflecting on the book? Roberta, did you go? You did? Okay. Donna, did you go? I think you were. Yeah. And did I miss anyone? No. Okay, excellent. Well, let's move on then. So I was screen sharing. There is an hour-long conversation with Tanya about this book, which I think is, obviously well needed and important as well. There's always lots of wonderful interviews with her. She's one of the folks that I love to listen to. I love to read her writing, whether it's an article or whichever. So I strongly encourage everybody to check it. Just Google her and watch videos of her. She's amazing. Love her to pieces. I do want to encourage a few different conversations. So first, I want everyone to be putting on their thinking caps and thinking of books that they want to see in the new year. Because I was looking at our list and I realized we're coming down to, we need to put in some more book selections. So now here's the other thing that I it's hard for me. I feel like I have a podcast, I'm sharing on social media, I feel like I'm always telling everybody where to go, how to get to this book club. Yet I constantly get people, well, how do I get involved? So I'm saying this more for other people as well as us. First of all, the hashtag Indigenous reads. So if you are putting up your book review of this book, and you're sharing it on social media, add the hashtag Indigenous reads. Just as we're a community, this book club right here, Indigenous reads is its own hashtag. CanLit is another hashtag that a lot of people absolutely love to use. And so CanLit and Indigenous reads kind of has that Indigenous perspective, really good hashtags to put out there. But if you were to Google hashtag Indigenous reads, hashtag YYC, you would come across our book club, because I've been promoting it for over 4 years now. So for those who don't know, this originated through 12 Community Safety Initiative. It's a nonprofit for the 12 communities of the Greater Forest Lawn area. There's a community connector that we have. It's a an actual physical flyer that goes out to the 12 communities in the Greater Forest Lawn. There's an ad in there for this book club, originally called Chapters and Chat. If you go onto the 12 CSI website, there's actually a section for the book club. And if you were to go on to nativecalgarian.com, my stuff, there's a whole section on book club. And it's this book club, only we're trying to promote it out there. Settler Book Club, really good book club to get out there as well. One of the things I love the most about Settler Book Club is that it's really doing a lot of that intersectionality with Black Lives Matter. And so looking at authors that are Black, reading that book together. And one of the things that was actually the Catholic teachers, they have a group and they read a book, only they read one book a year. That's it. So when I went there and I was a special guest speaker, I was like, holy cow, I'm tough on my book club. I make them read a book, an entire month. But now we kind of break it up a bit. And so we do a book, and then we do a section of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And then we do a book, and then we do a section of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I try to always encourage folks, when we read the books that we have, to bring it back to Truth and Reconciliation. Like, where do you see the calls to action that relate to the book that we're working on? This one specifically talking about so much suicide, right? And I think that Heather really articulated well, when you don't have that sense of self-worth. I know a lot of suicides are the loneliness of being displaced from your community. And, a lot of, it's estimated over 6,000 kids died in Indian residential school. Our last section that we worked on was the missing children burial monument sites. That was the last one that we had worked on. And so the next one is called Action 77 and 78. And I think it's the national, a Truth and Reconciliation resource. Here we go. National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. So that'll be kind of the next section that we work on for next month. But, and then once we get to the 94 calls to action, I know we all kind of talked about shifting to the inquiry, and then maybe start working on sections of the inquiry instead of the TRC. But obviously, I think because we've, delved into the TRC enough, as we continue those conversations, we'll probably be able to reference back to the 94 calls to action. So anyway, I do want to start talking about different book selections that we have coming up, and going from there. So I want you to be thinking about that as we go. And and if you also go on to our, 12 Community Safety Initiative actually has 2 Facebook pages, and one is called Indigenous Pride with 12 CSI. And the pinned post on there is always the information to this book club. Always, like what the new thing that we're working on, like whatever our book club selection is coming up. So, so like 12 CSI is a huge, not sponsor, but supporter. And the originator of this, when the funds ran out for my position as the Indigenous liaison, they were like, no, we'll keep doing this because they're a community, like a volunteer-based organization. So if I'm willing to put in the volunteer hours, they are definitely willing to support what I do. So I'm really grateful for that. So on there, we have a lot of the books that we have done. I've put, YouTube channels to some of the books that we did do. And what do we have coming up? So we have the TRC calls to action for January 77 to 78. And then Clifford by Harold Johnson. That was something that somebody suggested a million years ago that we never did yet, but now it's coming up already in February. So even I have to order this book. I don't have it. And then March, we'll do the calls to action for 79 to 83. Now, we had some suggestions. Mama Sketch by Daryl McLeod. I don't know if that one is still one that people would want to consider doing. Red River Girl by Joanna Jolly. Indian Coping and Mechanisms by Billy Ray Belcourt. Split Tooth by Tanya Talaga. Lesser Blessed by Richard Van Camp. Some other ones that people were pushing for was Me and White Supremacy. Redskin White Mass by Glenn Coulthard. Joyful Militancy by Glenn Coulthard. And he's Yellow Knife Denny like me. Conspiracy of Silence, only he's a prof and kind of amazing, in the academic world as well.
Michelle, quick correction. He didn't do Joyful Militancy, but they quote him a lot.
Oh.
And I don't think, I'm going to take that off. I don't think we should read that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Conspiracy of Silence. I'm not too sure who that was. I think that was on my to-do list to look at who the author was. Nishka by Jordan Abel. Anything by Arthur Manuel. So, honestly, the TRC is going to keep going until November 93 to 94, unless we want to compact those. I'm okay with that. This is a community-led book club, so it really is up to you what you'd like to do. So, I just wanted to throw that out there about where we want to go. And, nothing is set in stone after, I want to say, March. So we can, do the TRC in January, the next book, and then March. And then April is kind of like the start of another year of deciding what books that we want to do. And I've given some suggestions that were given before. It's hard. I think we're all avid readers, so we want to read them all and read them all right away. But realistically, that's hard. So, so I guess we'll do another circle. And basically, I want to ask you any closing thoughts that you have for this book, any new book suggestions that you have for the upcoming year that you want, is top on your list. Like I have one that I'm trying to read called An Act of Genocide by Karen Stote, because this is the sterilization of Indigenous women. I have another book that's non-Indigenous called Special Place of Hell or something, and it's basically about the mental health institutions they had here in Alberta, specifically in Penhold. And but it doesn't focus on Indigenous issues, so it's a good book all in its own, but I really wanted one that focused on sterilization of Indigenous, and this is the one that everybody recommended. So this is the one I've been kind of going through, but I'm sure you all have really great books. So many great books are coming out. So I wanted to throw it at you as suggestions, and I promise I'll make notes and add it to our list, and we can create a list of things that we want to do here. And I'll start with Rosemary.
Okay, first of all, very quickly in terms of books, what I thought for some reason there was a book similar to The Spirit of the Treaties, or a book that talked about what was really meant by the treaties as opposed to what, actually happened. Is there such a book?
Well, we've done clearing the plains. And
Right.
encourage anybody to write in the chat as well if you have ideas, as we're talking here. So there was that one. We haven't actually done Blackfoot treaties. Then there's the true and spirit. So Kat has one. So Kat, if you want to write that in the chat, that would be great. And
Can
then
you also,
she
can
has
you
that
also,
exact one you just said, Rosemary, exact one.
what's the title? I can't see the chat.
Yeah, I know.
Kat, what's the title?
She's trying to unmute here, but she's not unmuted yet. She's just figuring it out. There we go.
It's The True Spirit and Original Intent of Treaty 7 by Treaty 7 Elders and Tribal Council. I think we did this a little bit in Settlers Book Club, but I'm happy to read it again because it was really good.
Yeah, it would be good to start with the treaty from right here. And then in terms of closing thoughts, at our last book club, when we were dealing with that section of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission addressing missing children and burial information, we had this discussion at the end of maybe we should take on a project and create monuments if the government isn't doing it. And I committed to speaking to two different people, one from Siksika, and the other person, they're not Blackfoot, but have very close ties within the community. And I think reading the book we've just read helps me to understand both the response and lack of response from the people I talk to. The first person from Siksika said that they're no longer part of the leadership, so they're not aware if there are any talks going on with the government. But then they said, probably not, given that we're not informed about what happens to children in care whose organs are donated without the community or the parents knowing that that's what's going on. So that, set me back. And the other person, again, talking about health, they said, well, right now, the pressing issue for many communities is COVID, what's happening with COVID, what to do about it. And then also, who were, they in turn spoke to other people who said, well, who is this group of, basically not all, but white people who want to do something? Why do they want to, like a lot of suspicion almost. Not on the part of the person I spoke to, but they were just talking about this. Anyway, I don't think that's a priority. I'm not saying it's not important, but what about children right now, right, in care? What about children right now who are feeling like they want to end their life? So it seems like, I don't know, that we need to be looking at those issues and ways to offer support around those things. I don't know. I'm just going to throw that out there to see what people think.
Well, I can tell you, this is part of the problem, is that there's so many issues.
Yeah.
And, the chief and councils are trying to work within the ridiculousness of the Indian Act.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, the ongoing colonialism and genocide happens because, people are unaware of all of these issues, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, the longer we let, some farmer farm over somebody's, a child's grave, the longer it becomes acceptable. Everybody's okay with it. And so, as settlers, working with Indigenous, we're having this conversation about whose place is it with Langevin School. So I have a group of settlers who have really want to see Langevin School change, but because they don't know Indigenous people, they feel like, well, maybe it's not my place. The problem is that there's 5 people in charge of everything. And if they say yes or no, then that somehow allows them to speak for everybody when people like myself will take my child out of the Calgary Board of Education system because it's so racist, because they won't address it, because I don't want my child worshiping Langevin in any capacity, that like the rest of the community trying to thrive in the stupid system that we have can't. So like I just really encourage people to find, you know, like there's somebody of passion in every field. So there's someone of passion in social services, of child welfare, of, you know, all of these different things. There's somebody somewhere who gives a shit about that subject the most. So like when I talk about our leaders, you know, when I talk about legal leaders, somebody like Russ Daibo, he talks a lot about what's wrong with UNDRIP. Rachel Snow, and then I really like organizations more though, because there's still some unhealthiness that happens when it's just an individual, and I'm sure you've all seen pieces of that with me. So I really like an institution like First People's Law or the First Nation Information Governance Center to talk about OCAP principles. You know, there's always somebody who's interested in these topics. When it comes to child welfare, Cindy Blackstock, that's the person I would talk to. So if like that is your hill to die on, go talk to Cindy and work with Cindy, because I know she's already doing that hard work with folks here, and how we support them is how we tackle that issue. When it comes to suicide, you know, there, so that youth group that we were lucky enough to get, the Assembly of Seven Generations, I think is their name, you know, asking them how to support them. We Matter campaign, that's a suicide prevention for Indigenous youth. You know, how do we support that? You say locally, how do we support their suicide prevention programs? So like they are complex, but at the same time, it's established. So we don't have to, you know, do something new by any stretch. We just need to, like with the Langevin School, I'm just trying to bring together the activists like yourself that are doing that work over here, and the Black Lives Matter people who are doing anti-racism work over here, and the students who are actually forced to go to this racist institution, and their parents to come together. And for them to say, oh, they have Michelle Robinson cares. There's at least one Native that gives a shit. That they have somebody that they can go, okay, we're not just speaking as settlers, like there are other people, right? So that's kind of where we have to work with this. So when it comes to the missing burial sites, like we need to figure that out with the people already working on it, right? So that's kind of that homework and research that needs to get done all the time, that I always kind of stress when it comes to any project we're working on, right?
So that, so I've missed that piece. Who's organizations doing that work. Okay.
Kathy, do you want to add in any of that?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so thank you, Rosemary. Thank you for another wonderful year. You've been one of my long-term supporters since the establishment of this book club. I wish I could tell you and Dawn how much your support has meant to me personally, but then to your continuous leadership over decades of anti-racism work. I mean, I just hope you know how much I love you as an individual. I love your work, and I'm just lucky to be in your presence. And I just want to make sure I say that, because we have COVID and we have all of these other things, and today's that day to tell you how much I appreciate you. How about Roberta?
We appreciate you, Michelle. That's really, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Roberta, any closing thoughts about the book, and any other book suggestions you want to maybe see in the upcoming year that you would really want to read, that you have maybe sitting beside your book stand that you want included?
Right, thank you. I can't think of anything at the moment, and I have nothing of my own to add, but yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for, I love being in this community and talking, and I feel like I learned so much. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Awesome. Maybe Sarah?
At this moment, I don't have any book suggestions. If I come up with any, I'll just message you, Michelle. One thing I've valued about this group for the last 6 months is having that guidance to where the good books are. And I think as I get more savvy, I'll have more of a sense of where the good books are. But so far, you have introduced me to a lot of great books. And just reiterating, I love this group. I learned so much. Michelle, you're a guiding light. I know you struggle. I admire your bravery, your brashness, your, at least your outward face of just unrelenting courage. And so I know it costs you a lot, but it gives us a lot. So thank you. Thank you everyone here. I always learn every time one of you people opens your mouth. I am learning. So thank you and happy end of year. Better things to come, let's hope.
No kidding. Thanks, Sarah. Kat, any book selection or maybe final thoughts about the book today about Tanya
Yes.
Talaga's All Our Relations?
Yes. Final thought was at the beginning, you mentioned the questions that she's asking, where do I belong? And I'm reflecting on more and more, after I learned so much about the truth of our history, I feel like I belong to Canada less and less. I feel it's very difficult to feel like I belong here anymore, knowing that we live on stolen land. So that is something I've been struggling with too. And I appreciate all the learnings from all of you. There are so many books that could be read, but I just wanted to throw in also, I would like to continue on with the TRC calls till the very end and go through each one of them as we have been doing, because I find it really valuable and important to take a deeper look into each of them. A book I bought at the Glenbow on sale was this one, #Idle No More, and the Remaking of Canada by Ken Coates. I don't know if it's a good one. I'll put it in notes, but I'm interested in reading about this movement. And Michelle, you are an amazing person. I so appreciate all your emotional labor and your energy and your commitment. You are so inspiring to me and to everyone here. And once again, thanks to everyone, because I learned so much from all of you as well.
Oh, that's very kind. I read this book. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll have to go through our list to see if it was because of our book club. I want to say it was, but maybe it wasn't. So I'll go through the list and see if that's one that we should be adding to the list. So thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Racial battle fatigue sucks, but I don't know. I have to go through this anyway. So maybe we can all go through it. And I see us all as a community that supports each other. So
Yes.
Heather, I've been seeing you writing a lot. So any closing thoughts about the book that we did today, and maybe go through some of your writings here?
So I just put in to the chat, I'm pretty sure the book was called The People's History of North America, or America. It's the history of the it's the history of the rest of the continent from the first peoples. So like the actual history, it's really, really blatant. Very factual and encyclopedic, though there's not a lot of person story in it. And I just put a comment in there that I'd like to make a suggestion, because I get as much out of a book selection like Eden Robinson. I would never have heard of her if that hadn't come up. So I get as much out of a literary book selection as a Tanya Talaga. And so if we alternate the literary in there, because I mean, people that are Indigenous or whatever don't realize what a beautiful worldview, like the viewpoint that comes out in the literature is. And you can't generalize that, but just the worldview that comes out in the literature. I'm reading a little bit of Richard Wagamese and that, you know, and just the worldview that comes through in his ruminating or in his novels, for instance. But there's lots more out there too. And so to alternate the novels in with all the other work we're doing.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, do you think that we're not doing that?
No, I'm just putting that forward that that's what I really appreciate, because I wouldn't have even looked into Richard Wagamese or Eden Robinson. I wouldn't have been introduced to them. So I just want to make sure that we're valuing that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for those reflections. I appreciate that, Heather. And again, everyone here, how much I appreciate, you're one of my, strongest supporters and one of the longer standing folks who've come to these book clubs. So thank you. And it looks like Kat just said Birdie by Tracy. I know we've done that book and more by Richard Wagamese. So we can have a look at the list we've done and see what more we need to add. So thank you for those suggestions. And if you haven't read Birdie by Tracy Lindbergh, if it's only Heather and Rosemary and Dawn and I that have, maybe it's time to reread them.
I haven't read it. I wasn't here the very first year, Michelle. I think I joined at the beginning of the second year.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just put it on the list then. There's no reason why we can't start repeating some of the best books by any stretch. So maybe Jeremy, do you want to closing thoughts about the book and any other new book selections that you'd like to add?
Sure, thank you. Well, I guess a general closing thought is just how honored I am to be part of this group in the presence of so much knowledge and experience and wisdom. So I don't feel like I really have much to add, especially considering, the beauty of the books and the what we've been reading and discussing. There was like the short quote, I guess, from chapter 3 that I really liked. That was like a visual that really struck me. And maybe I could just read that. So Helen speaks of living in the third space. This space is best represented by one of her paintings, which she produced on her iPad while she was interviewing the victims of sexual abuse. One side of the painting is brightly colored and there is fluid movement, a synergy of flow and lines. This represents Aboriginal culture, she explains. On the other side, non-Aboriginal culture is represented by sharp, hard lines with little color. The two sides of the painting almost come together in the middle, but they just can't. And that is the third space. The third space is the blank space. The kids are floating in the third space of trauma and loss and grief and despair, and it is not where they want to be. Until we clear out the third space, we can't move closer to healing. So that really spoke to me. And I guess Heather's mention about the beautiful worldviews just has me thinking about the book I'm currently reading now, which many of you probably have read. I guess it's reversed right there, but Braiding Sweetgrass. I've read the first 2 chapters and both times I had to put it down because I couldn't read through the tears, and it's a different kind of tears, I guess, than the ones that came from All Our Relations, but it's very hopeful, and I don't know if that's what we want for this book club or not, but
yes, it is. Hope Matters by Lee Maricold was one of our books that we did this past year, and it was just shockingly inspiring for me. So
yes,
the poetry.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Donna, I don't think we've heard from you yet.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the whole group. You've all inspired me to dig a little deeper. And Michelle, the power of one. Whenever I think of you, the power of one. That's what I think about, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and being so generous, and I'm glad. I surround myself with everybody here because I find them inspiring. So I'm grateful. Heather says, oh, and pretend we are still part of the library and supplying the book up. Yeah, so we had a small relationship with the library, and obviously because of COVID, everything's just gone splitsville anyway. But I mean, the upside is now we're online and we can bring people from outside of Greater Forest Lawn. But that was the mission of 12 CSI, was to have, you know, something of pride that was Indigenous, that was in our community. Anyway, I recognize we're at 8:29, and Heather, or Crystal, I don't think we've heard from you yet.
Okay, I can go quick. From the book, one thing that I wanted to mention, so the government of Nunavut, their approach was all inequality issues must be addressed at once. And then I just imagine like we have to do everything at once. And then that creates some kind of synergy to shift the whole thing. I feel like there's like a lot of wisdom in that. And then, speaking about the whole Latimer thing, and I've been following Gabrielle Fayant on Twitter, and she posted, she's actually has a documentary on GEM CBC. I'm just going to pull it up.
And for those
who darn it,
Gabrielle Fayant came to our book club for Call to Action 66, back to the Assembly of First Nation, or Assembly of Seven Generations. That's her organization. So, and I think Kat put out an email through her book club to encourage people to, you know, if you're considering end of year donations. Anyway, Crystal, go ahead if you found it.
And and she, like her being a youth herself and being treated the way she was and everything. But so it's called Absolutely Canadian, Mamanda Gakwe. Beautiful Woman is the name of the short doc. So she was saying basically she just hasn't had opportunities, right? So those are the people who don't get opportunities when other people who are not genuine are taking the place. And then the other thing I had bookmarked was Cindy Blackstock had put out a yearly review of the TRC. And Call to Action Accountability, a 2020 status update on reconciliation. It's at the yellowheadinstitute.org. I can try, I'm not very good at typing in this chat on the iPad, but I can send it and maybe forward it. One thing that she was saying is she's not counting anything as in progress. So it's either it's done or it's not done. Like the CBC one has all these things that say they're started and they don't go anywhere. I'm like, I really like this approach way better.
Me too.
It's completed or you're not working on it. You don't get any credit for partial efforts. We're done with this.
Beyond 94, I always wondered, because it's government funded, if that's why it's so, you know, giving them more than they should.
Yeah, kind of wonder, right? So just having an impartial, like, and just being really clear, I think is good.
Yeah.
I actually wrote to Carolyn Bennett's office, right, as Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations, about that section on missing children and burial information, and said, I've seen your website, so I see what you say that you've been doing, but have you done anything beyond that? Because basically you're talking about what you're going to do. Yeah, it's that same feeling, Crystal. It's like we're going to talk to people and then it just sits there. So I haven't heard back, but I thought, you know, just say to them, I don't want the stuff you usually send out. Tell us what you're actually doing.
Great. Excellent. Well, folks, we are a little over time at 8:33. I want to say thank you. Happy solstice. It's a really important moment. We don't have this moment like once every 400 years, apparently, with Jupiter and Saturn. So I just can't tell you all how much I appreciate you being in my world, being part of this community, having people that every month we can go, oh, Michelle Latimer, or whatever the moment of the day is together. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And
Thank you. And Kathy too, I really appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
may everyone have healthy and safe New Year and healthy and safe holiday celebrations. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's pray for that, friends.
Mhm.
Right on.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank
be
you.
safe, be merry.
Take
Bye.
care.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, get a Mutzen. See you again.